Hello, my name's Michael and I'm an alcoholic. This video will be what I call my war story. So when I was just getting sober, where I got sober, they talked about the experience, strength, and hope. Well, this was part of the experience of what led to me getting into recovery. So I started drinking regularly when I was 15 years old. Not as early as some. It was mostly getting drunk on the weekends. I was going to school, getting good grades, playing sports, played football, baseball, skiing, and I had spent the 5 years previously going through a lot of pain and trauma and not having a real great time of it. And I ended up in a child adolescent psychiatric unit for inpatient for a month and outpatient for another month. And I was very introverted, very shy, didn't do much, didn't get out a whole lot at that point. Basically, I got out of there and my dad told my older brother to get me out of the house, take me out, do stuff with his friends. And one of the things that my brother and his friends did was drink. So I started drinking, and boy, it really did feel good. Got me away from being me. Got me out of the shell, that all that stuff. It was, it was to me at that point, it was the thing that was missing. And I really took to it. I didn't like beer at the time either, but when we were going out to try and get stuff to drink, I would always end up trying to get a bottle of my favorite drink at the I always was trying to get Yukon Jack, which is a whiskey, and it tasted fine. Actually, it tasted really good right out of the bottle. And it was 100 proof because, the point of all of this was to get drunk. I wasn't really interested in the social aspect of it that much. I mean, I was hanging out with people, obviously, but, it's time to get hammered. And I did. Shortly after that, too, I started smoking some marijuana on a regular basis. So drinking and marijuana went hand in hand at that point. And occasionally I'd mix in some other, mostly psychedelics. That was sort of my MO. And, the point was always to get drunk because that made me feel okay with who I was. Because before that, I hadn't felt anywhere near good about who I was. Anyway, that continued on mostly that way through high school. Took a year off after high school. I had gotten really good grades. I was pretty high up in my class, but I was pretty resentful towards school at that point. So I took a year off, did some odd jobs here and there, worked around a little bit, moved to a different state for a few months, came back that next summer, got a job cutting lawns, and then ended up going back to school. But there, everything started to escalate. I think the first few weeks that I was at college, my roommate and I got, beer or whatever every night. Oh yeah, I had started drinking beer as well at that point because back in the later high school days, there's enough people going, hey, maybe you should drink some more beer. It's more social. Well, okay. So I developed a taste eventually, but that. The years at college, you're at college, you're supposed to drink, right? That's, big party time. This is the mindset that I'm in. Any excuse, any reason to drink was appropriate. So I did. I'm not going to go into great detail in this video about all of my escapades drinking, but, kind of hopefully show the escalation of it. Having graduated high school with a 3.7 grade point average and towards the top of my class, I was expected to do well in school, and I probably could have done pretty well in school. in college, but I started to lose interest and definitely was on the beginning of the downhill swing towards the alcoholic oblivion. So I spent spent 3 semesters at college, and towards the end of the third semester, as I already knew, I wasn't even going to classes at that point. I'd found a guy in my dorm who was kind of in the same situation. We had basically decided we weren't going to be coming back after that semester, so we just would drink together. Basically would, for the last month, would get up in the afternoon, evening, meet up, figure out what we were going to drink, go get what we were going to drink. Often it was a bottle of this stuff called Devil's Springs vodka, which was about the same price as any fifth of whiskey, but it was 160 proof. So, more bang for the buck. And we'd go back to the dorm and hang out with some friends and stuff. And then they'd all go to bed, and he and I would go into the common area and drink all night. And then go down to the eatery to get our breakfast, and then go our separate ways. And I would go to bed and sleep most of the day during, when my roommate was in classes, get up, rinse and repeat. So I left school, got a job cutting lawns and doing landscaping, and did that for a few years. And it just progressively got worse, drinking more often, drinking after work. I'd go out, hang out with some friends during the week, usually go over to my buddy's place, and he and I would, find some cheap vodka to buy with whatever change we could scrape together, and be hanging out at his dad's place and hope that his dad had some like frozen cranberry or something in that we could mix in with the very cheap vodka and get hammered. And then it was at one point they had repeats of Star Trek The Next Generation on, so we'd watch Star Trek The Next Generation at night from like 11 to midnight, and then I'd drive home and get up and go to work and do the same thing over and over again. And it started to get to the point too where even before I was going to go hang out with him on the way home from work, I'd grab a half pint or something like that to drink. At some point I went to a trade school at night. It was an 8-month program, and I finished it and I graduated. But by the time I graduated, I had gotten a drunk driving and was on probation and was trying to get a job in that field and that career. But the first job offer that I had was out of state, and I couldn't leave state, and I couldn't I couldn't take the pay cut from my landscaping job. So I didn't take that, and then I did an internship for a while too, trying to get there, and with a restricted license and all that kind of stuff, and that didn't work out real well. And all this time, I'm drinking every night. I'm doing pregame too. Get out of work, get a pint or something like that before I go out drinking with everybody. All day, not all day, not yet. It was an all evening, every day thing. This whole time, I'm just, part of me saying there's something wrong. I don't know what's going on. But the rest of me was like, yeah, just keep going. This is it. I was living my life as if I wanted to die. And at some point here, I turned 21 and I started going to the bars. Found a bar with some people that I would play pool with. So I'd go over to that kind of a dive bar, play pool, practice, and drink all night during the week. And then party with my buddies and friends on Friday and Saturday night, and then go play pool on Sunday during the day and drink and get drunk. And it was just getting to be, I didn't have any control over it at that point anymore. Played pool in the middle of the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon one time, and we got done with it was on a league, and we got done with the competition, and then I came to head on one of the tables and woke up, came to, and was looking around for my keys, and the bartender had them and made me wait a little while until I was reasonable, gave me the keys back and drove home, and had a terrible day. And it just kind of continued like that for a while. The drunk driving didn't do anything, didn't phase really anything for me at that point. Wasn't my fault. It was, I don't know. Came up, you always come up with some kind of excuse why that's not the problem. Everything else is the problem but the alcohol. That's always that's the mantra. Everything else but the alcohol. The alcohol is the solution. Drinking is the solution. Everything else is the problem. Basically, a year and a day after the first drunk driving arrest, I got another drunk driving arrest. And it was, looking back on it, kind of funny right now because the guy pulled me over and I had a few people in the car. And it was later in the evening, later at night, and he rolls up to the car and he goes, I rolled down the window and he says, "Have you been drinking?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Yes." It was just, I didn't have any fight left in me at that point. Wasn't going to even try, I guess. It was clear anyway. So anyway, I got arrested. And spent, I guess, that night at the local township jail, and then because I don't really remember any of that. And then they took me over to the county, and it was busy that day or weekend, I guess, because they didn't have any room in the actual cells, and they had they were putting people in the gymnasium there on mats and stuff like that. So I was laying there, and somehow I had got my lighter in there. I don't know. They didn't find my Zippo, but I had that, and I couldn't smoke anyway, but I was laying there and I was shaking and was contemplating what was going to be happening in my life as a result of this. And I had come to the realization that obviously my life was going to change at this point. And I came up with 3 different ideas of what I would do. The first was to get out of jail, grab any cash that I could, pack up my car with as much stuff as I could, and just go. Had no idea where I would go. Just go. Just didn't want to deal with anybody, didn't want to deal with people. And then the second one was get out of jail, get out of trouble, take care of all that stuff, then pack up the car and get as much money and go. Just don't be where I was. Which reminds me of a phrase that a friend told me one time. He said, "Wherever you go, there you are," which is not what I was thinking at the time. I thought, well, if I could just run away, then everything would be better because it's everybody else's fault. The third thing that came to mind was, as many people had suggested along the way, that I stopped drinking. And the immediate thought that came after that was that I could shoot myself. Because that's what not drinking meant to me at that point. Not drinking meant I was dead. Was just not worth living at that point. The scary thing, though, was, like I've said before, I was living my life as if I wanted to die. But this was getting to the point where I was getting willing to act it out. And so I laid there, and the scary part of laying there was I became willing to do any of those things. I would decide later when I got out. And fortunately, I got bailed out, and it became pretty clear right after that. Fortunately, I got picked up by family, and fortunately no one said "I told you so" or anything like that. They just were disappointed probably and confused and all that stuff, but they just loved me. That helped. I'm looking back on that now, and those are the words that I can put to it. I probably wouldn't have been able to put those words to it at that point, but I'm pretty sure that's what was happening. Anyway, I decided not to kill myself, and then slowly over the next few days, I detoxed on the couch and decided that I didn't like being in trouble, so I would try to do what I could to get out of trouble. And I had to ask for help with that, my family and things like that. So obviously we're decades down the road, and I haven't had a drink in a long time, and we'll cover some more of that as we go. But I got the help, and it's a happy ending. So that's probably a good start on the war story. As I talk about more stuff, as I talk about steps and process and everything else, more of that story and more details will come out. But that's a pretty good general description of what was happening and what was going on. So this is I'll call this one good as far as the war story goes. Yeah, look for the next video. We'll talk some more about the early recovery process and asking for help and the continuing confusion early on, making decisions and all that good stuff. There's a phrase that I used to say a lot early on, and it's a good one, and I have to remind myself sometimes, but I'll remind myself by telling you, and it's God loves you, whether you like it or not. God loves you. All right. I'll see you on the next video.